obviously.
All right, hey, we're here, we're live. Thank you, everyone. I asked them to cheer, and they were very obliging. Thank you for that. So yeah, we are live out there. Zoe Brings Bacon is in the chat room. So is Silverblade. And there are already titles being submitted in the chat room, which must be very confusing to those of you on the live stream who are like, but they're not on yet. What are they talking about? Tom?
We've done pre-show, pre titles.
Yes. Hello, 40 Thieves in the chat room. So you made it in. That's good.
And I can't stay in the chat because I'm on an iPad. And every time you change tabs, it dies.
Oh, yeah, I hate that.
Boo!
Multitasking my...
power consumption.
Yeah, multitasking my power consumption. Right. So, I mean, the only bad news is that Sarah couldn't join us. Unavoidable circumstances. So she will not be on the show. But Roger is here, Will is here, Ian's here, and all of you guys are here. So we're going to have a wonderful show in about 5 minutes. Anything else we need to take care of before that? No?
I'm doing it right now.
We got 5 minutes to finish.
Can you guess what it is, Tom?
What exactly are you doing right now?
What you just asked? You asked me to start doing it 4 weeks ago.
Oh, I actually do know what he's talking about, and it's not what any of us were thinking. It has to do with embed, E-M-B-E-D, of a YouTube video on a page. So.
Yeah.
Where's Will gone?
As we have but 5 minutes, Will has left.
He's like, nope.
He's taking care of it right now. So how have you been, Ian?
I've been good.
Yeah.
I feel like I've had a really good time. We've spent a lot of time together this
trip.
I
know. This has been great.
It's been great. Yeah, it's been really good fun. We had a wedding. We had some drinks.
Ian and I are married now.
Yeah, we are. It was very special. You had fun.
I did, yeah.
In spite of the rain and the weather in general.
No, we barely had any. I never got rained on once.
No, there was
I saw rain out the window.
There was a conversation about having to put a coat on or go inside, wasn't there? Because you're a
I was
Californian.
a little cold waiting to throw the confetti because it was noon.
It was really cold.
It was very chilly that time, and I didn't have anything but the suit coat.
Yeah,
well, I had a shirt and pants, but
I
didn't have an overcoat.
That would explain the chilliness. Yeah. That was good fun. Did you dance?
Yes, Eileen and I did one dance. Right?
Awesome.
Can I confirm that? Yes, we did.
Cool. It was good, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great. It was really fun, and it was a lovely area. I'd only been west from London. So it was nice to go a different direction.
It's a novelty to go anywhere where you can't get a taxi unless you tell them a week in advance.
And they did. They showed up too.
Yeah,
that was the other thing.
That's
I told them a week in advance, and then they were there. I was stunned. You okay?
No, I was really grateful for the invite.
Don't look at me. I'll introduce you someday.
No, actually, it was really weird. Talking of that, I went to France a few years ago, and I was in the middle of a major French city, and there was no Uber, and I just had this realization of like, how do you get anywhere without Uber? And so I walked to a sort of what you would expect to be like a taxi stand, where with a bunch of cabs, and there's like 3 or 4 cabs all parked on this taxi stand. And these 3 or 4 French guys all standing, smoking their gauloises. And I was like, hi, I really need to go to the Leclerc hypermarket. And they're like, it's too much traffic right now. I was like, but I'll sit in the traffic. I need to go. Take too long for us. And I was like, oh, and you wonder why Uber's eating your business.
Did you book a week in advance?
Yeah. Clearly.
All right. Well, Ian, I did not prepare you for this So one last piece of business. Do you have access to our Google Doc?
I do.
Would you,
the sheet.
You're
as
in
a
the
professional
rundown.
podcaster, would you mind reading a couple of these?
I don't mind at all.
stories
I
that
did. You know, I have a really good memory of. It was. I can't remember which one of the CNET podcasts it was. We did in Vegas.
Yeah, yeah.
And I came along, and I totally didn't know that was going to happen. And also I didn't have any internet. Like you had a 4G thing, and it just wasn't working.
Yeah.
So I'm like, no, my initials. Read this.
That'll learn you.
Problems at CES Internet. Shocker.
Yeah.
Yeah, no kidding. All right. Well,
Just don't say I'm Sarah Lane.
I won't. It's not in the script. What is in the script is the correct date and your names. And whatever Roger else decides to put in there between now and the time I read. All right. I'm ready. If you all are ready, shall we?
Yeah.
We have one. Do I hear a second?
Motion carried!
All right, here we go. 3, 2, 1.
The Daily Tech News Show is brought to you by people like me, not outside organizations. To learn more, go to dailytechnewsshow.com/support.
This is the Daily Tech News for Monday, October 9th, 2017, live from London. I'm Tom Merritt.
I'm Will Harris.
And I'm Ian Morris.
Joining us from our Glendale studios, Roger Chang is in the house producing as well. How are you, Roger?
I am fine.
Good. Things are normal in California. Sadly, Sarah Lane was supposed to join us remotely as well, but there's some wildfires going on in Northern California, and her mom lives in Northern California. Her mom's fine. The cats are fine, but she's helping her deal with that because there's been some evacuations up there. So Sarah's not with us today. She'll be back tomorrow, though, so do not worry. Meanwhile, let's start with a few tech things you should know. Nikkei Asian Review reported Sunday that the Sony Aibo will return with a new model incorporating AI sometime in the middle of 2018. That is more a response than I thought.
Sony Aibo is more love than I've ever had in my life.
Oh, that's not true.
Apple has released iTunes 12.6.3 with support for iOS 11. Funny you thought that would exist already. This version is meant for enterprises that still need the version which contains the App Store that was removed from the most recent version of iTunes.
If you've been paying close attention, you're like, wait, that version number's not right. Yeah. So if you were one of the people, there were several who wrote into the show, were like, wait a minute, I use that App Store on my desktop. You'll be able to get that older version of iTunes.
It's now back.
From Apple legally this way.
Happy days. Screen's going off. Hulu announced on Monday that it's ordering 4 new original esports series. Shows include a debate show called Player v Player, a documentary series including following Team Immortals called Boot Camp, and a chat show called Defining Moments, and a recap show called ESL Replay. You can tell I'm really deep into esports, can't you, from the way I read that?
So Facebook got all of ESL's actual event streaming, but Hulu's going to get the chat shows basically about it. Yeah, I'm curious if that will pay off for them. Here's some more top stories. The Washington Post reported Monday that Google has discovered the Russian organization spent less than $100,000 on ads that ran on YouTube, Gmail, and other Google properties. Google officials are expected to testify publicly before both the House and Senate Intelligence Committees on November 1st, alongside Facebook and Twitter, about Russian attempts to use their platforms to influence the U.S. election. So this is similar to the Facebook and Twitter stories we've been seeing, where unnamed organizations, and the implication is that they're somehow government connected, but it's never very clear how or who they are, spending relatively low amounts of money to run ads that are definitely trying to sway people's opinions. I'm curious how you guys feel about this not being your election from outside the fence, because inside the fence, it's a very partisan feeling about this stuff.
Well, they might have done the same for Brexit, maybe. I mean, there was some discussion about that. Whether or not that's true, who knows? But
I'm just impressed, Tom, that $100,000 doesn't count as very much money to you. We all know where our Patreon dosh is going, don't we?
It counts as a lot of money for me. I also don't spend anything on advertising. But
Yeah.
$100,000 ad campaign, I mean, you talk about if you really want to sell something or sway opinion, you have to spend a lot more than $100,000, don't you?
Well, on that note, Facebook Security Chief Officer Alex Stamos went on a tweet storm on Sunday, in response to fake news and election meddling accusations. Stamos said he's seen criticisms driven by stereotypes and straw men, and wrote, "Nobody of substance at the big companies thinks of algorithms as neutral. Nobody is not aware of the risks," which sounds really quite Orwellian. Facebook has informed advertisers that going forward, ads that target politics, religion, ethnicity, or social issues will have to be manually approved.
So I get where Stamos is coming from, because a lot of people are basically he's feeding the trolls. He's reacting to the people who are like, you guys don't care, you're not doing enough. And I think Facebook honestly is trying to do things, and I don't think they thought AI or algorithms were going to solve all of this stuff. But how do you guys feel?
Well, is manually approving it going to really solve anything? Unless you know exactly where the money's come from, you can't really police it, can you?
Well, there's something to the fact that an algorithm will make mistakes. And I think what Stamos is trying to say is we knew the algorithm would make mistakes, but we figured the mistakes would be so rare that cleaning up after them would not cause as much of a controversy as this is. But if you have a person doing it, even if it still caused a mistake, people accept it more because they're like, so did you fire those people? Or who were those people? And why didn't they do a better job? It's just, when you point to the algorithm, there's a certain appearance of abdication of responsibility.
But her emails.
Yeah, I mean, it's all a very difficult position to be in, because, as I've said on the show multiple times, nobody's starting with the evidence of the effect. And when I say that, I wrote a whole column about it last week. I'm not saying there isn't an effect, but you need to start with, like, well, what did $100,000 get them? What effect did it have? Then we can work backwards and say, okay, now that we know that it did that, how do we stop that, the bad effects of that?
And can you do anything about what the results that come from it? Like, I mean, you can't un-Trump Trump, can you?
Well, and I'm not convinced that this is what got it. This is not the thing that changed the election.
Almost certainly not. Yeah. Well, tweeting Sunday, bad news, everybody. Microsoft Windows lead Joe Belafori told us that Windows Phone is not very well. Building new hardware and features are not the focus, Belafori said. The company will continue to support the platform with bug fixes and security updates. And Belafori's using Android.
Yeah, and Bill Gates is too.
Yeah. I'm actually genuinely sad for one reason, in that I think you need 3 good operators to really give some diversity. I mean, you might love Apple, you might love Android phones, but it's always good to have another party.
Well, and BlackBerry's using Android now.
Yeah, exactly.
Right. So they're actually on a resurgence, mostly because of the security software, not because of phones. But even so, they're Android. Nokia, Android.
Everyone knows someone who loves BlackBerry.
Yeah, it's a Windows Mac world.
That's like saying everybody knows an idiot. Doesn't mean you have to listen.
Is it though?
I know several.
I also think it's funny that this is Microsoft Windows head Joe Belfiore, according to the headlines, declaring Windows Phone finally dead. Probably the 12th, 13th time I've seen that headline. And Belfiore said, it's not our focus. Like, they still aren't saying, that's it, folks, it's over. But partly because, one, they want to do security updates. They don't want to abandon the people that are out there still using these phones, because that would cause them a firestorm, even if it's a small number of people.
But it's kind of the same way that, like, competing in the 100-meter Olympics is not my focus for the next 18 months.
Right.
It wasn't really an option to start with.
Well, but Windows Phone was an option.
Was it?
Yeah, the thing is as well that they've got to the point now where you can almost see where they were going with it. Like, as an example, Windows Store apps now can run on Xbox, Windows, and phone.
Right.
That's kind of a cool ecosystem.
They're doing better as a tablet company.
Yeah.
Than they ever did as a phone.
I don't understand why. No, I mean, I do understand why. I just wish it wasn't the case. But
it feels like Satya Nadella is basically saying there's just no winning on that platform. Let's cut our losses, move to AI, become the software that runs on these things. Let's get Office on there. Let's get Cortana on there.
Maybe they shouldn't have wasted all that money on Nokia. I mean, I say waste. I know that what they're doing.
Satya Nadella would probably be like, it wasn't me that wasted that.
Yeah, well, indeed.
Did we have any Windows Phone users in the audience? We've got one. Yes. All right. Brave.
Good man.
Yeah. How many of you were not brave enough to raise your hand?
Commiserations, sir. Commiserations.
Uh-huh. Do you still use it?
Yeah.
Yeah. See, so you would be very upset if they just said, "We're not even providing security updates. We're done."
Yeah, but also Android phones.
And he's also got an Android phone.
You didn't ask what he used it for.
Yeah. It props up a chair. Oh. Benchmarking company FutureMark collected 100,000 benchmark results for 7 different iPhone models across 3 versions of iOS to create performance comparisons. This was done particularly to address the question that we've all had of, did Apple actually slow down my old phone to make me want to buy a new phone? And it turns out they did not find any evidence of that. FutureMark found that GPU and CPU performance remained generally consistent across iOS updates. A few dips, but also a few rises, but generally flat and even across. Devices feeling slower as they get older are likely caused by the software you run on the operating system targeting the newer models. So everyone updates their apps to run on the brand new model, and those apps run a little slower. Some of the features in iOS that are new are optimized for the newer models and run a little slower, but the operating system itself isn't slowed down. Does that make you feel any better?
I think what's happening is people look at their phone and they go, I want a new phone now. This is slow.
Yeah,
Even
well,
though
I mean,
it probably
that's
isn't.
probably part of it, right?
Yeah.
There's a psychological aspect to
Yeah,
it.
for sure.
Will, does it bother you?
I'm one of those absolute idiots that upgrades to the latest thing as soon as
You don't
it comes
even
out, or it
notice,
comes-
yeah.
I wouldn't even notice. My old one's in a landslide somewhere.
So did you go to the 8 or are you waiting for the 10?
Oh, I'm getting both.
So you went to the 8 to get you through to the 10?
Yeah.
What are you going to do with your 8 after you get the 10?
Crush it.
Prop up a table.
You'll put it next to his windows.
Yeah. Give it to Joe Belfiore.
Here, you need an iOS phone, Joe. You got to test Office on something. Yeah.
On that note, the U.S. Federal Commission's communication.
Close.
Try again. The U.S. Federal Communications Commission granted Alphabet an experimental license to operate its Project Loon internet service in Puerto Rico and the U.S. Virgin Islands. Project Loon, if you are still catching up, uses helium balloons to deliver LTE and can help the island regain some connectivity lost during the recent hurricanes. Alphabet is going to partner with local carriers like Telefonica. Meanwhile, Puerto Rico's governor, Ricardo Rossello, good Lord, say that quickly. Puerto Rico's governor, Ricardo Rossello, has had talks with Elon Musk about sending batteries to Puerto Rico in conjunction with solar panels to help restore the power grid. German microgrid company Sonnen is also shipping batteries to Puerto Rico. Thank goodness for pop filters, because that is a lot of consonants.
It's a lot of Puerto Rico. This is interesting. I mean, I think it could have some knock-on effects for Google that they are getting the chance to try this in unforeseen circumstances for a good reason, right?
Yeah.
To help restore the internet. But it's going to put this system to the test, which has been tested in very controlled circumstances in other parts of the world.
Do you guys have the word loony in the States?
Yeah, I was going to ask this.
Yeah. Well, in Canada,
like loony is someone who's insane.
yeah, in Canada it stands for a dollar coin.
Oh, so loony over here is someone who's a lunatic,
Right.
And the idea of floating LTE in helium balloons over a hurricane-savaged island, like, sounds lunatic.
Yeah.
And so I love the fact that it's called Project Loon.
Yeah.
It sort of does what it says on the tin.
And also, I wrote a story not long ago about the idea of Nokia using drones to do the same thing. I mean, it's not sustainable for a long period of time, but in, like, say, for example, Northern California now, you would have drones in the air if the cell towers went down to help out. It's quite cool.
Yeah. I'm curious what other companies we don't realize are pitching in to help. I remember during Hurricane Katrina, there was an open source group went down and did mesh networking. I wonder if anybody's been able to get over there and do something like that. I sense that Elon Musk is more about talking about this than necessarily
I mean, the guy senses
running to help.
I mean,
but
the guy senses a good PR opportunity.
yes,
Get
Puerto Rico.
PR, because PR is
Oportunidad.
Yes.
See. But I do think he means it. I don't think anything that he's lying about anything he's saying. The fact that that Sonnen is like, oh no, we've already been sending things to emergency shelters and stuff like that. That's when you're really pitching in. And I think Google was wanting to do this early. It just takes a while for them to get the permits and everything.
And I think there are very few places where if you're Elon Musk, you can basically like rebuild a power grid from scratch.
Yeah, it's
like he's got the opportunity to say, okay, we'll come in. Here's a boatload of cash. we can build your power grid from scratch and prove the actual point.
Because he was serious about Australia. He's like halfway through
Absolutely.
helping in Australia right now to help rebuild their power grid. So this is an excellent opportunity. I know that one of the reasons Google is doing this is because it is a U.S. territory, so it makes it easier for them to get permits. But one would think it would be nice, and they're also planning on doing it for the U.S. Virgin Islands, but the other islands in the Caribbean need help as well. And I wish it was easier for them to be able to pitch in and do that as well. Well, that, my friends, is a look at the top stories. Thanks to everybody who supports us on the subreddit at dailytechnewsshow.reddit.com. You can submit stories and vote on them there, as well as facebook.com/groups/dailytechnewsshow. For our main discussion today, I wanted to ask you guys, because you're both from the UK, and we're in the UK with a bunch of presumably mostly UK residents here, with a few exceptions. We got some
No Europeans.
We have an Alabaman. We have a couple of Europeans. You're all Europeans right now. For now. But one of the things I get a lot of, and I try to work against it, is everything is a US bias coming out of podcasting, coming out of tech journalism, because CNET, The Verge, all these places are located in San Francisco or New York. All the big Silicon Valley companies dominate the news cycle: Google, Apple, Facebook, etc. They're all U.S. companies. How bad do you think that is, and why do you think it is?
So, can I just jump in and start with a topic that we were actually discussing in the pre-show?
Yeah.
Which is there is, like I'm sure many of the live audience here in London, England. Thank you. I listen to a lot of the shows that you are on, whether it's DTNS, whether it's Cord Killers, and I find that there are entire segments of discussion that are completely irrelevant because it's just not the same issue. So, for example, Star Trek Discovery is obviously the hot new TV series, which is causing all sorts of discussion on every podcast I listen to. What is CBS All Access? Who's going to use it? It's $6 a month, but what's on CBS All Access? Well, I only want it for Star Trek, etc., etc., etc. CBS All Access not only doesn't exist over here, but over here, Star Trek Discovery is a Netflix original. So you can just open up your Netflix and watch it like normal.
Everywhere outside of US.
Everywhere outside of the US. So every piece of discussion about CBS All Access that revolves around Star Trek is utterly irrelevant.
Now, I would say that if CBS All Access was similar to another effort elsewhere, that it would be more interesting, because you would say, well, CBS All Access doesn't matter to me, but there's this other channel that might do that. But I don't think there's a parallel.
But the problem,
that's
the problem is that there's nothing
too.
that's got such a headline series as Star Trek.
Yeah.
Like, Star Trek is so universal. And the fact that it's on this one really weird random platform in the States and yet is on just Netflix everywhere else, is a really interesting point, and is a completely, it's one of those things that skews discussion in a way that I think a lot of Americans, don't quite grasp.
Well, and also cord cutting itself is different here. You have Freeview, you have Sky providing a cord cutting option for years, well before we ever had one.
Yeah.
And so the idea of, let's say, Channel 4 or ITV just saying one day, we're taking one of our top stories, let's say Downton Abbey is still on the air, and it's all new episodes are only going to be available on this for pay. So it's unthinkable, right?
Well, maybe. I mean, those sort of things do happen, but I mean, one of the clear examples was I've lost my complete train of thought there. Someone else go. Sorry.
Wireless
I'll get back
internet.
to it.
I think the other thing that I really find interesting watching is the complete. You guys talk a lot about the fact that there's no competition for internet in various different states. And it's like, if I live in X state, I can only get Comcast, or if I live in Y state, I can only get AT&T. And I think that's something else that we really struggle with, because not only are there, like, basically everywhere you live pretty much in England, you can get a variety of different telco providers, but there are now so many options for getting wireless as well. So I've lived in London the last 4 or 5 years, but where I lived previously in Oxfordshire, the best way for me to get broadband connectivity was wireless 4G. And I could get wireless 4G faster than I could get DSL or cable, just because I guess we were in a smaller place, right? And I think there are so many discussions over net neutrality is a huge one. Provision of internet access to different states, that's a huge one. That just don't exist outside of America. And I think if you talk to even more, if you talk to like Patrick and talk about France, like that's an entirely different situation again.
Interestingly, Patrick's always very interested in the net neutrality discussions because he's worried about the precedents they could set.
Yeah, it's all about like what happens in America slowly filters over here, as opposed to this is actually happening over here at the moment.
Well, the point I was going to make, which follows on from what you were saying, was we don't have anything like cable card. So one of the things that I've always wanted to have was a way for people to get Sky or Virgin without having to have their box, because I always thought it'd be better if you could just get a card and, you know, you're not depriving them of any money. All you're doing is giving people a way around their service. But because they all want to control that kind of stuff, they don't want to do it. And there's no, the Ofcom, which is our FCC, have shown literally no interest in sort of regulating that market. So,
and I think that's a fascinating aspect on that note of the Xbox One. So does everyone remember when the Xbox One was first launched, a few years ago, and the entirety of the sort of push for it was, this is going to be your one box that goes under your TV, and it includes cable, and you can pipe all your TV services through it, and et cetera, et cetera. And of course, none of it worked with anything outside of the US. There was no ability to pipe in Sky.
You could not pipe in any cable companies in the US.
No.
The only cable companies that worked with it were outside the US.
So it was totally bonkers.
Yeah. So we were able to, you could have it control your box was the best you could get. So we actually had it through, we had over-the-air TiVo.
I mean, that's never going to happen because my girlfriend controls the box in my house anyway. So there's no idea that the idea that Xbox is going to get over it.
Yeah, but even then, like you would have to set up an infrared repeater, and it was just a mess.
And I tell you what, as well, I think that because the cord cutting thing's become so big, if you watch what Plex are doing now, they're slowly going after TV. So they've just launched this news proposition thing that they're going for, which gives you access to news streaming,
customized news,
that suits your taste. And then they've got this tuner thing where you can just plug in a certain tuner, and they sent me one to try, and it's really good. It's like a really nice service and free over the air. America's got reasonably good over the air. It makes a lot of sense. I can see why cable companies are worried.
So let me tip it on its head and say, Tom, as a citizen of these States United, what do you look outside and say, oh, crikey, I wish we had that?
Well, some of it is competition in broadband. We've touched on that. A lot of it is just, there is TV programming that I look at and say, I can't wait for that to come here, or I wish it was easier to get.
Not just taking a little trip over the seas.
Yeah, I don't want to have to break anyone's license agreements or pretend to be Nate Langson to watch the BBC. That's just not right. But yeah, I don't know, outside of those sorts of things, if there's anything else that I'm looking at craving any more so than I look at any other region that gets a service first. So there's, Singapore, you can get an autonomous taxi right now. That's pretty crazy. I would like to be able to do that, and they're going to be able to do that in Arizona soon, but I'm not in Arizona either. So
what about, I was going to finance? Now, I've had a few conversations with American banks, not with American banks, with people who use American banks, and they tell me that it's a pretty archaic system and it's very difficult to get modern apps, whereas we've got some good financial stuff happening with banks that offer really good app interfaces. Monzo is this, I think it's a London-based thing.
I can't think of anything from my bank. I mean, I can deposit a check by scanning it and stuff like that. So
pretty good.
Yeah.
You still have checks in America?
Yeah, it's weird. I mean, checks happen.
Is that how you pay your guys, with check?
No, I pay everyone with PayPal.
Bitcoin.
It's funny. It's older people. Like, there are a few people who support DTNS.
Wait, are you being Chexist right now?
Yes.
I'm going to interrupt you and just say in a couple of cases. I'm going to show my face and stop presenting. Landlords take checks.
That's one of my examples too. Yeah.
Oftentimes for certain services, that don't take credit cards, a check for a large, like no one's going to carry $300, $400 on them. It's easier just to write a check. And if it's from a well-known bank, people take it. I mean,
everyone in the audience here is looking at you like you're a mentalist, Roger.
The mentalist?
Three or
CBS All Access.
$300 or $400 I'll pay a check. Roger's like, what? Just get some tenors. No, that's mad. I think what's really interesting is that having just come out of Blade Runner 2049 yesterday, what's interesting is that whereas we used to look at places like Japan for leadership in this kind of area, we don't really see a lot coming out of there right now. If you look at, they've got some fantastic retro brands that.
Well, they got some good. They got some good robotics.
Yeah, they've got an IBO.
Yeah.
Well, I think part of it is.
But I mean,
there's a bit of a
look at Sony.
Pepper.
You don't look at Sony as being the biggest, best TV manufacturer in the world.
No,
you don't look at,
But you do look at Nintendo and Sony for gaming.
Yeah.
But presumably a lot of normal tech is South Korea now, isn't it? Like
it's manufactured, it's designed. Yeah, and I think tech is more worldwide than it's ever been.
The biggest right now is Huawei, right?
Huawei, Alibaba, Baidu. These are the biggest. These are
Chinese,
some of the biggest companies in the world. And that brings me to the last question I wanted to hit on, which is we talked a lot about examples like net neutrality, where it's use cases, user-oriented stuff. What about the fact that Google, Facebook, Apple, Amazon dominate? Does that bother you guys?
So I think it's interesting from there's a couple of different ways that it's interesting. One is that the European Commission is much, much more pro-regulatory than the US. So when you see major changes happening a lot of the time to US companies, it's because they've been prompted by EU sanctions. So, when Microsoft opened up Windows to other browsers, that was, mostly because of the EU rules.
Didn't do it in the US.
I mean, right. Yeah. If you look at what Google's have been forced to do with things like the right to be forgotten has all come out of the UK. I think the interesting knock-on effect that it has actually coming from as someone who's running a startup right now is that it creates a very different startup ecosystem. So if you look at the US, there are hundreds of companies in the US that have had multi-billion-dollar exits, whether they floated on the stock market or sold to Google or whoever. That creates an entire tier of extremely wealthy tens of millionaires, right? Which creates an entire community of investors that then invest in the next generation of technology. If you look at the number of extremely large exits in the UK and the EU, there are far fewer of them. You can debate all the reasons of that is, but that means that there's a much, much smaller community of investors, which means there's a much, much smaller cadre of startups coming through, which means that there is therefore what's the opposite of a virtuous circle? A vicious cycle.
An invirtuous circle.
An invirtuous circle. So in the US, you have multi-billion-dollar exits that begat lots of angel investors who then invest in big companies, which then become multi-billion-dollar exits. Because we haven't had really a Google or a Facebook or somebody that huge. I mean, apart from Spotify and Skype are the two big exceptions.
What's one?
Arm. But of course, Arm's gone mostly to Japan now, so it doesn't really count. So we haven't had quite the same level of exits, which doesn't create the same level of ecosystem. So there's less investment in the startups of tomorrow, which I think is a really big difference between the US. And
also, is there a cultural thing in that people who exit in this country take the money and then they just don't do anything? Whereas in America, the Valley is full of people who are, they get some money. They want to invest in other things to make more money.
Well, British people don't really like talking about money, which I think is the fundamental problem. It's just a bit rude, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's like, how much do you sell your startup for? Oh, a few quid.
Going back to my great house in the country, and I'm not going to talk about that.
Yeah, exactly.
All right, let's get to our messages of the day. Ron Ryman Jr. writes, in response to Mike's question last week about pacemakers, I don't know if you caught that, but Mike was asking, hey, how do I find out the best pacemaker to talk to my doctor about? Ron says, I work at Medtronic, one of the three major cardiac active implantable medical device manufacturers. So there we have a new acronym, AIMD, all three of which are primarily located in Minneapolis, St. Paul. He says, I'm not aware of a website that does direct comparisons of pacemakers from the manufacturers around the world. And much of
I'm going to get on
And much of the marketing material is targeted at cardiologists, but pacemakers are a very mature device family, and the technologies are well developed. Mike should be engaged with his cardiologist during the device selection process. This entertains you quite a bit, doesn't it?
I just want to know how Joe Belfiore feels about it.
Some cardiologists have preference by manufacturer. Some selection can be driven by clinic or hospital contracted insurance reimbursement. Pacemakers and electrical leads are expensive devices, but Mike can look at the 3 pacemakers we sell, of course. The other 2 major U.S. device manufacturers are Boston Scientific and St. Jude, and they have similar patient information on their websites. Of course, I can't give medical advice, but if he would like the other information, I could get him in touch with a local field engineer. But yeah, I mean, you have to talk to your doctor about it, but that's a good start, is to go to Boston Scientific, St. Jude, and he works for Medtronic, and you can start looking around there. But I mean, all kidding aside, if you need a pacemaker and you're like, hey, I know there's some cool features with these things now. I want one that
I'm really concerned about pacemaker neutrality. What? Am I going to have a fast lane?
Did you not hear about the Bluetooth vulnerability with pacemakers? Yeah, that's no joke.
Yeah, I mean, we have a comparison site called Compare the Market, right? It's the advert is a meerkat. It's Compare the Meerkat, and so I can just imagine being flogged a pacemaker by a meerkat. That'd be amazing.
Consult your cardiologist. And then Duncan wrote in to recommend twofactorauth.org, which we talked about last week as well, if you want to find out which sites offer two-factor authentication. He also uses Follow That Page at followthatpage.com, which is a free service that monitors up to 20 sites a day for you of any changes and notifies you when there's a change to the site. So he uses that he goes to twofactorauth.org to find out who offers two-factor auth. And then any of the sites that he wants two-factor authentication from, he then signs up on Follow That Page to see when they offer it. So he gets an email that notifies him that. That way, if you're worried about not having two-factor authentication on a site and you want to know as soon as they get it, you can sign up for that.
And he says, thanks for the show. I'm a proud patron.
Yes, thank you.
Lots of patrons in the audience.
Absolutely. We all know that tonight is, maybe you don't. We were talking about it earlier. Tonight is the premiere of the new Last Jedi trailer, Star Wars The Last Jedi. DTNS resident artist Len Peralta is creating another year-end poster, like he did one a couple of years ago on Force Awakens lines. He did a different one last year. This year he's commemorating The Last Jedi and another year of Daily Tech News Show featuring myself, Roger, and Sarah. So Sarah as Rey, myself as Luke, and Roger as Kylo Ren.
Can I be Yoda?
Yeah. Can we we'll stick a Yoda in there as well. You can be a part of the poster by adding your name to the credits. If you go to lenperaltastore.com, you can purchase the poster, get your name in the credits. He only has 30 slots for that. So if you want that, you should probably get that done right away. And not only do you get your name in the credits, but you'll get 11 by 17 poster of the print signed by Len. So hurry on over to lenperaltastore.com if that sounds interesting to you and become a part of DTNS history. I mean, that's
amazing.
Yeah, the mock-up that he's made of it over at lenperaltastore.com alone is worth just going and taking a look at. Roger, you've never looked more ominous.
I think Tom looks like Beja in that one as well. I'm not.
Yeah, you can pretend.
I'm not convinced that you're not being replaced.
You can pretend it's Patrick Beja if that makes you more comfortable with buying the poster. Thank you everybody for joining us here. First of all, big thanks to Ian Morris.
Thank you.
Techpodcast.uk.
I believe so, yes.
Is the place to find text message. Anything to tell folks about? I mean, even though Nate got married, you guys are still pumping out episodes.
We are indeed. We had a break. We stopped our break, and we're going to carry on, hopefully, for a long time. We've been reinvigorated by our rest and by the wonderful support that we've had from Patreons. It's a real game changer.
Do you remember what's on this week's episode?
This week coming is a special iPhone and Apple Watch review. Oh, dear. How amateur of me. They would have cut that out, but this is live.
Yeah. So check that out, techpodcast.uk. I always want to stick in a code. It's not there. Okay, yeah. Got it. Will, thank you so much for putting this together, man.
Well, thank you very much for coming over. It's been an absolute pleasure to host you.
It's been a pleasure to be here and let folks know a little bit about what you're doing here so that they understand why you're able to pull this off, because you don't own the building or anything, right?
I mean, I wish.
Yeah.
I'm the co-founder and CEO of a new startup called Entail. That's ENTALE.co. You can go there and sign up for our pre-release beta notification. We're building a fantastic new app for podcast creators to get their podcasts out into the world much more easily. And for podcast listeners, it's going to be the best podcast experience you can possibly get. So go there, sign up, get the pre-release notifications, and we will let you know when we've got something really cool to stick on your phones.
All right. And big thanks to you guys for putting this together here, Graham.
Chelsea,
Claire. It went up. It went up very well. Thank you. And thank you all. Give yourself a round. Our email address is feedback@dailytechnewsshow.com. We're live Monday through Friday, 4:30 p.m. Eastern, 2030 UTC at alphageekradio.com and diamondclub.tv. Our website is dailytechnewsshow.com. I'll be on a plane tomorrow, but Sarah Lane will be here with Patrick Beja. They'll talk to you then.
This show is part of the Frog Pants Network. Get more at frogpants.com.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.
Thank you, Roger Chang.
Yes.
Roger. What's the show title going to be?
What are we going to call this?
Tom likes it.
All right, let's see what our options are. All right, we have What Happens in America Doesn't Stay in America, but her emails, Trumping Trump, Embedded in London, Puerto Rico Gets Loony.
Can we have how about thanks to Will Harris and Entail.co?
Oh, I wouldn't want to embarrass you.
Oh, you sweetheart.
Tom checks into London, is a Checkist. Tom is done English.
Show title, Thanks for the Pizza. I like that one.
You can go to showbot.tv and see all of these yourself. Doesn't matter.
Now, is this a democracy, or do you just pick one that you like?
It is a constitutional monarchy. Yeah. I will take advice from our parliament.
I think what you call it is a benevolent dictatorship.
Yeah, kind of more of that, I guess. Yeah. I'm definitely not doing a political headline. Windows Phone is not very well. Was pretty good.
No, it's just pining for the fields.
I suppose that is a good British understatement, isn't it?
It's gone to meet its maker.
Windows Phone is
Brits with Merritt. Alphabet goes loony with FCC.
Yeah.
Thomas.
Yeah, so which one?
Oh, you knew that was going up.
I like
as soon as
that.
you said it, yeah. Keep calm and eat bacon is pretty good.
There's some British spelling of Cheques.
I like Federal Commission's communication. I was so determined to get that right. I
just wrote FCC. All you had to say was FCC.
I know. I was once again stretching beyond my limits.
Well, that's what we love about it.
Oh, ask your AIMD if pacemakers are right for you. I like that.
Puerto Rico Gets Loony is not bad.
Yeah.
DTNUS. No, that doesn't work. Does it? That should be DTN UK. Yeah.
Oh, DTN Simples as well. That's good. But that won't. No one will get that.
I only just
It won't work at all outside the UK. For that reason, it should win.
So we should make it that. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh my god, that's amazing. Keep calm and eat bacon. I quite like.
Yeah. And I have some. Zoe brought bacon.
Yes. I like the one from Roger in the pre-show. I'm doing it right now.
Oh no, my flag fell. Oh no, it's over there. Okay. Yes, and Zoe brought these lovely flags that we had on our mics. Our mic flags. Literally.
Decisions.
Roger, do you have a favorite?
Can
I be Yoda?
That's quite
kind of hard to say. Nothing.
Do any of you in the audience have a favorite title?
Tom checks into London.
Checks in. Spelled properly. I see.
Quite right.
Zoe brought bacon. Submitted by Zoe Brings Bacon.
Jeez, narcissist. Two Britos and a Tom.
Pretending to make Langston. I love it.
How about a case of podcasters?
A chaos of podcasters. Nice.
Yeah.
3 guys in a plant.
Well,
Between 2 plants.
between 2 plants, aside from 1 plant. Windows Phone is not very well. Tom checks into London and DNT Simples.
It's got to be DNT Simple.
Oh, that is going to fall so dismally flat.
All right.
They're going to be like, what?
How many for Tom checks into London? Voice vote, please. Windows Phone is not very well.
Wait!
Couldn't hear over Will. DNT Simples. Oh, it did not.
It's Tom checks into London.
Tom checks into London. Yeah. All right, we have a title.
All right.
Roger's like, well, thank God for that.
That took a
Only
long
took
time.
20 minutes.
All right. And Roger, you should be able to see, Roger, in DTNS 2, the output leveled version of the wave. Tell me if you do.
Wait, who are you talking to?
Levelated it
Roger.
already? Have you just levelated it already?
Yeah.
Jeez Louise.
I usually just publish it, but I'm making Roger do that so I can hang out a little more.
Wait, where did you stick it? In the
Yes,
Slack?
Sorry, late change of show title. Where did you stick it?
No, in the Dropbox where
Change the name.
Stick it right in the Dropbox.
Oh, show. I'm gonna make it. Go ahead and make the MP3. You'll still need to do the ID3 tags. Anybody want to see it output here?
There we go. Look at that. That is nicely levelated.
See all the P's in the middle.
That's me failing to say Puerto Rico's governor of Gugrotha. That's me completely. Federal, was it federal? What is it actually say? Federal
Communications Commission.
Right. What is it? It's Federal Communication and Cock-Ups.
That would have been a good title.
Yes. It's 1, 2, 3, 4 exclamation point for security. I'm exporting the MP3, Roger.
Cool. Are you putting in the Twitch DTNS? I have the folder open. Are you sticking under?
Yeah, I'm going to put it in the DTNS folder.
So just in the root of that folder.
Yeah, just.
So, whilst are we in post-show recording?
Yeah, we are.
Can I do a little show of hands with people? Who here is on iOS? Android. Okay, if you're on iOS,
Kaizen.
iOS. Who here uses the default iOS podcast app? Ooh. Okay, can people shout what you use? Overcast, Downcast, Pocket Cast. Okay, Android. What do people use? Shout. Overwhelmingly. Is that because there's nothing else on Android?
There's loads apparently. I asked because I was like, why is there no podcasting app on this thing?
There's a new one called Entrail.
Entrail, get the inside scoop.
That's good.
And that's why they pay him those big Patreon bucks.
That's why you all pay me $1 a month.
What are you going to sell that idea for to Will?
I think I probably signed something to get in here where he now owns it.
All IP.
Unfortunately, you sold it to the Daily Mail.
The Weekly Standard owns it now.
That's excellent.
For the
And
evening.
how many people here actually produce their own podcast?
Oh, good.
Ooh, a solid one. What do you produce, sir?
Film show. It's supposed to be weekly, but it's like monthly.
What is it called? Free promo.
Don't.
The new podcast, don't. It's a killer.
Never turn down free publicity.
Yeah.
It's an amazing podcast.
Cinemazing podcast. Ian Morris is on text message.
Yeah.
Excellent.
You're going to make a big buy for us. Offer us a big exit.
I'm going to get a big check.
Yeah.
It's going to be
Just a big check.
yeah. It's going to be for like £1. It'll be a novelty sized check.
I would love that. And also, it's not my show; it's Nate's. So yeah, you have to do the negotiating with him. Really.
Well, I can bribe you. It'll be fun.
I don't have any equity. I don't think. I haven't discussed that with Nate. Should I? Is that a question I should?
I mean, I wouldn't really raise it on the air.
Nate, are you listening? What do I own?
Nate's not listening. Nate's on his honeymoon.
That is
He's
correct.
doing far more important things.
Stargazing in Wales.
Well, he's definitely on his.
But he's not, because it's Wales and it's bound to be raining.
He said he would be
Sorry,
watching.
I am Welsh, so I can say that.
He said he would be watching.
Yay!
Yeah. So, hi, Nate.
What do I own?
Poor Nate's wife.
Hi, Kate. Roger,
Oh, I know what I was going to ask.
the MP3
Which
is in the
is
Dropbox.
better film for you of the two most recent
Tell me
Star
if you see
Wars? Is are you a Rogue
What, is it
One
Rogue One or
man
Force Awakens?
or Force Awakens? Yeah.
I do like I like Force Awakens.
Yeah.
because it's
I
got
see
Han Solo and Harrison Ford.
And it's a shot-for-shot remake of A
And
New
it-
Hope.
Right. Rogue One I love because it's a different set of people, and also that ending is a total twist that I didn't see coming. But what annoys me is the same thing. Any of you guys watch Cord Killers with Brian Brushwood and some guy called Tom Merritt? So Brian's got this theory that he really wants to see a movie in the Star Wars universe that isn't about the original trilogy. Like, it's not Darth Vader and it's not...
Yeah.
And the reason, like, I love Rogue One, but I wish it didn't have Vader and Grand Moff Tarkin. I wish it was just... What I want from those Star Wars anthology movies, I want the equivalent of the old books.
Right.
That are like Star Wars stories in the universe, but completely unrelated to the main trilogy. The fact that they made Rogue One more of the main trilogy kind of just bums me out.
Does it? That's interesting. I mean, I love Rogue One. I do think it's the better one. I think it's a more interesting.
It's definitely a more interesting premise.
Which I probably
I'm really excited to see if The Last Jedi takes us in a new direction.
Well, so okay, then going forward, what are you more excited about, The Last Jedi or the Han film?
Oh, Han Solo, I think it's going to be a dirty mess.
It's not looking good for it.
It's going to be all I can think about when I think of the the Han Solo movie, like directed by Ron Howard. Is I think I keep thinking of that Arrested Development style narration where it's like, I think this is going to be a great idea. It wasn't.
Yeah, that'd be quite good in its own
Never
right.
tell me the odds. They told him the odds.
Parsec was actually a measure of distance, not speed.
And then just Job wheels quietly out of the background.
There's going to be a Midichlorians gag in there somewhere.
God. It's going to be awful. I had a really, really, really embarrassing moment actually a couple of months ago where we were talking about the fact that Baby Driver is obviously which I still haven't seen, much to my annoyance. So Baby Driver stars Ansel Elgort, and Han Solo is played by Alden Ehrenreich. God. And I was absolutely convinced they were the same person. I couldn't remember. They were like, Baby Driver, oh yeah, that's the guy that's played Han Solo. No, that's Ansel Elgort. No, you're thinking of Alden Ehrenreich. No, Ansel Elgort. I'm like,
so
what?
confused.
And I lost about £100 on the basis that I was so convinced at 1 o'clock in the morning that it was Alden Ehrenreich that was both Baby Driver and Han Solo. And it turns out that one of them is Ansel Elgort and one of them is Alden Ehrenreich, and I still don't know which one is that.
IMDb app
IMDb.
That's what you need.
If only there was some sort of always-on device that I carried with me that had these answers.
You mean an interconnected network of networks?
Yeah.
What a thought.
It's uploaded.
Actually, I thought that the other day because I was walking past. I'd gone back home to my parents and I was walking past my old high school. I remember I was walking past my math class and I just remember my math teacher just complaining at me when I was using a calculator, telling me, "You won't always have a calculator with you. Do it in your hand." And I was like, "Walk past." I was like, "Screw you, math teacher! I've always got a calculator." Yep.
So the podcast is published. If anyone wants to download it,
Click on your app
again.
Get into your podcast app of choice. Seem to be Intel.ing.
Is that normal? 20, 30 minutes or so after the end go?
This might have even been a little slower. It all depends. The bandwidth there is really good, so this is about right. On the
more like net positivity. Am I right?
I'm on T-Mobile, which is my actual provider. Mobile. So I've been on 3, and EE. I've been on EE. Everything Everywhere.
Everything Everywhere. It's the conglomerate of T-Mobile and Orange.
But I get T-Mobile.
And Deutsche Telekom.
But I get T-Mobile too.
Yeah, that's interesting that you get that because they're basically they shut. That's
wait, BT owns EE.
I don't know why.
They bought it last year.
I thought BT owned O2.
It must. I reckon it might be a code, but I don't know why you'd still get it. It's weird.
Where's the one that's based in the UK, not some sort of US rubbish.
Text message hosted by Ian Morris.
What a great plug.
All right. Well, we're going to end the broadcast. So thanks everybody for watching. Say goodbye, folks.
Bye.
Oh, you know what? Before we end the broadcast,
should we do a little impromptu?
Can you read it now?
God save our gracious Queen, Lord live our God save the Queen, send her victorious, happy and glorious, long to reign over DTNS, God save our Queen.